It should work. Woo! All right. Well, let's continue on. What did I have next on here? Oh, so our fearless leader Donald Trump recently designated Antifa as a terrorist organization. And when I first heard this, I did laugh because you and I both know that there is no like official organization with that name. There are lots of organizations that consider themselves anti-fascists. But obviously there's no like Antifa meetings. And so at first I was like, yeah, LOL, that's ridiculous. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, well, they're just going to use that label to any sort of left-wing anybody, and use that to bring them up on terrorist charges. It hasn't exactly happened. Well, it does. I feel like somebody that was involved in Palestine Action actually recently just got sentenced to several years in prison. Like, it has happened. Calling these people terrorists for fighting against the empire in a variety of ways, specifically attacking like private corporations. Do you have any thoughts about Antifa in general, or like this? Like, what does this mean as more ways that they can come after left-wing organizations?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. We were talking about the Red Scares earlier, right? And in a period of clear capitalist crisis and probably American imperial empire crisis, you time and time again see this attempt, in an attempt really to refortify the system, which is capitalism, this fascist aggression against the left more broadly, and trying to find conspiracies or spooky aspects to use as a pretext to do the crackdown they've always wanted to do. And so in the wake of something like Charlie Kirk's, assassination or murder, I don't even want to call it assassination, it's just a murder.
Right, yeah.
They use that, and they're already using that to kind of crack down. Now the question is, does Trump have the follow-through to actually do the crackdown, right? There's been times in the past where Trump has officially declared Antifa as a terrorist organization. What does that actually mean in practice? And there is still obvious legal constitutional rights to free speech that just cannot be washed away by the term terrorist. But applying the term terrorist does give some legal wiggle room, probably, if it's taken seriously, if in any way the Supreme Court validates it. But even if the state itself doesn't do much in this regard, it is a dog whistle, in a sense, for street violence or vigilante violence from those on the ground that see themselves as part of the right wing or against Antifa, right? Antifa, they cancel out, you're a fascist.
Yeah. You're a fascist, yeah.
But interestingly, it's also, and liberals, we've been telling liberals this the whole time, when the right cracks down on the radical Marxist left, the communist left, and when you, Mr. Good Liberal, help facilitate that, you're really signing your own death warrant, because they do not differentiate. A liberal who made a TikTok giggling about Charlie Kirk's death is Antifa to them, right?
Right.
Somebody who believes or wants to join a protest against ICE or against the Republican governor for abortion rights or something, that's Antifa to them. It is a catch-all term to anybody they deem as their political opponents, which is anybody to the fucking left of J.D. Vance or whatever the fuck.
Right. Right.
So this is a trend in American history. We saw it, in the 70s with the Black Panther and the MOVE bombings. We saw it with the first Red Scare, the second Red Scare, McCarthyism. I have an episode coming out about 20th century anti-communism in America that covers all of this history. And it is yet another iteration of that. Now, in the past, though, there has been more of an organized left, right? In the first Red Scare, there were militant radical red trade unions, right?
Right.
In the 60s and 70s, there were the Weather Underground and the Black Liberation Army and the Black Panther Party organizing masses in black communities against capitalism and empire, right? There is a left in this country, for goddamn sure. It's just not organized. And that is a purposeful consequence of a century of attacks on that left. And so that's why organization is so important. But the more organized we get, the more counter-revolutionary backlash and violence from the state that we will receive. But then again, dialectically, it's precisely our organization that in some sense allows us to weather those storms. And when we're just a bunch of individuals with opinions on the internet, right, the state can come in, or some vigilante racist freak can come in and do violence against you. And it's harder to prevent or be organized against, or to have an organized response, in reaction to. So yeah, who knows where this is going? It could be another Trump just talking shit, bluff. There's still a legal architecture here that you just can't go start ripping, people out of their homes. I mean, I guess ICE is doing that, but on the pretext that they're not here legally. And Trump has alluded to the fact that he wants to use ICE against even legal citizens. And so this is what's happening. And if you had a more competent, ideologically focused fascist, other than a bumbling fucking idiot like Trump, I think we'd be in a lot more danger. Somebody that could actually maneuver the institutions in the way that they want. So Trump's ignorance and goldfish attention span is kind of to our benefit. But he is building out a state apparatus that is capable increasingly of doing this. And so I really am, sort of ambivalent about what's coming next, about how much to take these threats seriously. But as capitalism continues to fall, as the left continues to grow, as the empire continues to weaken, as contradictions continue to mount, the state proper will have more and more of a reason to try to suffocate and stifle any growing opposition to this decaying, rotten system, which generates opposition as it decays, right? So yeah, I'm not exactly sure what to expect here. Antifa, again, is just a buzzword. It's a boogeyman. Antifa is just anybody who's anti-fascist. And yes, there are totally autonomous cells that do rise up to confront fascists in the street when organized fascist movements come to the street. But it's not even an attack on the state, right?
No,
it's ideologically opposed to the state. But when it actually manifests as like black bloc, it is sometimes in protest of police, like in Portland, but often it is to confront organized reactionary and fascist movements that show up in cities. And you'll continue to see that because people don't fucking like fascists and Nazis organizing in their city. So how do you crack down on basically what is a sentiment? There's no organization. This Republican reactionary idea that there's funding behind all of this. I'm sorry, we're on the American left. We don't get funding, right? George Soros isn't funding us. He's funding like liberal NGOs or whatever the fuck. There is no funding, but this insane fever dream reactionary idea that we're paid protesters and there's like these shadowy funding forces is as hilarious as it is disturbing, because these fucking freaks actually believe it, and they have, at least in theory, the power and money to do something about it.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point about like the Soros money. And it leads into my next topic or whatever. We have another big No Kings protest coming up. And I haven't looked into this one, but the first one was funded in large part by one of the Waltons, like of the Walmart inheritance. And obviously, I'm very skeptical of anything that is billionaire-backed, even if they're claiming to be somewhat anti-fascist. I did not go to the first one, and I kind of want to swing by the second one to see just what happens. But it is these, like, very AstroTurf, very... I went to some of these after the Dobbs decision came out. Texas has, or had, a trigger law, and so we're under a full abortion ban here now. And I, naively, thought that would be a turning point to really get people to rise up and start to organize more and to fight against this oppression, because I had heard for decades women say that they take this right away, we're going to burn everything down, and then like literally fucking nothing happened when they did take that right away. So I went to some of these women's march type protests. Mostly I usually show up, me and some comrades will show up with a bunch of bottles of water and some flyers, right? And just be like, hey, we see that you care, here's the next step or whatever. Like, and it's, some vaguely Marxist stuff. So thinking about this, like this next No Kings protest, and I worry that these types of like liberal astroturfed organizations that aren't really actually anti-fascist, they're anti-Trump, right? And that they make a point to make a distinction there, and so much of their solution is well, let's just vote for Beto, or like, let's just get Gavin Newsom as president, and like everything will be better. So I kind of just wanted to get your thoughts on these liberal protest actions, and if you think that they are a valid point of struggle that Marxists can, if not infiltrate, at least like show up to and maybe propagandize to some of these people a little bit, or if you think we should just completely ignore them and keep doing our own tenant organizing or whatever.
Certainly, having a presence at these protests can't hurt. What is there that is of value is energy. Right. A lot of the energy is neutered by liberalism, and what they're ultimately calling for is a return to a democratic party which has paved the way for this exact thing. They're not dialectical materialists, right? They're locked in the ideology. They do not see how the people and politicians that they support and the politics that they represent got us precisely here. They've been voting Democrat their entire lives. They've been supporting blue no matter who their entire lives. And this is where the fuck we are. Going back to Gavin Newsom or Beto or whatever the fuck, or Pete Buttigieg, or heaven forbid Kamala Harris in 2028, isn't going to solve the problem. It will only make it worse. Obama didn't solve anything. He made everything worse. Biden didn't solve anything. He made everything worse. While they had some better policies than the Republicans, it's still little thumbs up on the way down a fucking hill. So, there's no real substantial solution to any problem at its root. It is just Band-Aids on broken legs until the fucking body falls apart. Right. So are you going to get through to a liberal telling them this? No, they'll see you as a Russia puppet or whatever, because they're as much in a cult as the MAGA fucking freaks. Yeah. And I don't say MAGA freaks to mean all conservatives or all people that voted for Trump. I mean the fucking cult members. We know who I'm talking about.
There is a difference for sure. Yeah.
For sure. The same thing with the liberals, as we were talking about earlier. Plenty of good-hearted people interested in moving left or movable. And there's a faction of the Democratic Party that is just a fucking cult. And they're so locked in their ideology, they can't see outside of it. They're in a box. And they are also exactly part of the problem, because their solution is more of the problem. It is contributing to where we got here. Some of them you'll be able to break through, but there is just this is America. This is American ideology in a decaying American era where the empire and the economic system is in rapid deterioration. The psychological consequences of that is what we're seeing in society. Rampant nihilistic violence, incredible narcissism, consumerism as everything falls apart around us, and the people who have been ideologically conditioned inside the narrow spectrum of Americanism going fucking insane as they still try to slam their square block in the circle hole of reality. Yes. And that's just going to keep happening. And and that's the psychological consequences of buying into a system that is fundamentally falling apart in front of your eyes, but being unwilling, or probably in many cases incapable of getting out of it, right? So have a presence, have a critique, understand the limitations. At the end of the day, though, even having a presence isn't that necessary. There are certain movements where we should have a presence in, right? These popular fronts against ICE, for bodily autonomy, Bernie rallies against the oligarchy. Those are places where I think that energy actually has a significant portion of it that is, if you're doing let's elect Gavin Newsom and let's make sure that no crazy left-wingers come into this protest, and, then I think that protest is probably a losing battle, and you'd probably be better spending your time and resources anywhere else,
Yeah.
Even if there are fair. Like 10 people that are winnable,
Yeah, and sometimes I think just flyering a little bit is helpful, or there are other events that might be more liberal that are more worthwhile. Things like explicitly queer things like Pride. Pride in so many ways is taken over by corporations. The parade here is always like, here's the Tesla float, like as if that is a good thing to have. But I think in general, queer people are very liberation-minded because they're under this extra oppression under capitalism right now. And so maybe our energy is better spent at these events that are maybe slightly more radical or able to be more radical than like this No Kings thing that is again funded by the Walton family.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it is also helpful relationships that you already have, personal relationships. I think we, you, me, everybody who might be listening to this, that is more a Marxist, that is more radical, has liberal friends and family members. And they might think you're a little bit wacky, but we can gently educate the people in our lives. I had lunch with a friend the other day, and somehow I found myself explaining the 2014 Maidan coup to her because she was like, wait, you don't support Ukraine? And I was like, look, I support the working class of both countries, but like, this is actually why this war is happening. And she like had no idea, right? She didn't know anything about that. And I sent her some information. She like is appreciative of, me explaining these things to her. I also told her about Tom Homan and how he was actually originally hired by the Obama administration, who gave him an award for being so good at deporting people. And he was, he was there during Trump won. Biden didn't get rid of him, and now he has this high up position, where he's like the super deporter or whatever. And it's like these things. Trump didn't just give this man a job, right? Like he's been here for decades because of Democrats, because he does what the liberals also want him to do. And so, like, gently having these conversations, and then just giving people resources to, like, you don't have to believe me. It's like LeVar Burton used to say, you don't have to take my word for it. Open a book. And, it doesn't have to be aggressive or, like, read Lenin. Like, I don't think everybody has to. No, I would definitely never tell anybody they have to read Capital. Like, that is it's so hard to do. It's so much.
Exactly.
But as long as most people understand where you're coming from and stay out of the way for the most part, if people don't want to fight fascists or be aggressive like that, like I understand that, but like there are people that can grow food and like mend clothes, and there's so much work to do on the ground that isn't fighting, and I think once people start to understand that, they will be a lot more likely to support in some way the cause of liberation, right?
Absolutely. Pause 1 second. I just want to fix this crazy light situation that I have.
Oh,
just
yeah, cool. I'm gonna go let my dog out real quick while we're breaking.
Okay. Yeah, so I wanted to touch on a couple things that you said. I know you're not there right now, but you'll be back. I'll just talk for the recording, so it's not dead air. But the thing about the reading Lenin, reading Capital and stuff, that's what a vanguard party is for. That's what political educators are for. Not every person needs to read it. There are certain ways that you can get the important information across without making somebody sit down and read all of that. And I think, a lot of the stuff that we're trying to do here is to do that, is to uplift people's consciousness and to teach them things. I was just talking, so there was no dead air.
I'll cut the dead air anyway.
Okay.
You look much less angelic now. You were just shining with light.
I was turning into pure light.
There you go.
But I also wanted to say a point that I always make, and you're talking about people in your life and connecting with them. I think this, and I make this point all the time, I think it's crucial. This is why being a good person is important. People in your life that respect you, that know you have a good head on your shoulders, that can count on you, that find you to be responsible, that find you to be honest, that find you to be a good person, that actually is much more of an opening for you to have your opinions than not. If you're a shitty person, right? If you're like a fickle person, you're feckless, you don't show up when you say you are, you lie, you deceive, you're self-interested, you're narcissistic, whatever. People will just look at your politics and be like, oh, I bet they are a communist. Like, yeah, okay, I'm going to listen to you about how to change the world. You're a fucking dick. You're an asshole. You're an idiot, whatever. But if you live to a standard of high ethical standard, that actually is one of the best things you can do for the communist movement, because then people will hear your opinions. My coworkers, when I walk in, they're not caring about what the fuck I think about the world. Can you work with me? Can you make me laugh? Can you shoot the shit back and forth? Can you earn my respect? Can you have my back? Then once I have that, then they're like, actually, I'll hear Breht out on this thing. My family, my friends, my coworkers, because they fundamentally know, first and foremost, I'm a good, normal, not weird, not alienating person. And that opens up the door. So I truly encourage people listening. All the politics stuff, all the theory stuff, all the practice stuff is essential. But it's also essential to be the best fucking person you can possibly be. Not so you can lord it over people, not so you can feel good about yourself, but because being a communist means having an extra responsibility to other fucking human beings, not only politically, but personally. Treat people with dignity, with respect, tip well, don't tell lies, don't cheat on your spouse, don't fucking be an asshole. Don't be an egomaniac, right? You're not here to tell other people what to think or why they're wrong. People will just shut you the fuck out. Be a good person, hold yourself to a high ethical standard, and that creates the conditions in which you can reach people much, much more effectively than if you're a fucking freak, an asshole, right?
I love that. You can be weird, just be a positive kind of weird.
Definitely be weird, yeah. I mean, I'm weird, but in a good way,
Yeah, exactly. The right kind of weird. Okay, exactly. So the last thing I kind of wanted to touch on is concerning, like, the next generation. No, I'm not talking about Captain Picard. I'm talking about children, right? So, it's well known that you are a father. I believe you have 3 kids, varying in ages, right? You have, like, a teenage daughter, and, like, a little one as well. So, I can't even imagine how hard that is right now. Being a teenager right now seems so difficult. We're close to the same age. Like, I'm really lucky that we didn't grow up with, like, social media and just all that crazy influence and having a smartphone on you at all time. I was, a kid in the 90s staying up late having, like, landline phone calls with my best friend. Like, that was what that was like. Playing outside. We didn't get a gaming console until I was much older. So the struggles of the children themselves is one thing. But just, like, what it's like trying to impart some of this stuff onto your children, without it being just overwhelming. I was listening to you on Upstream recently. It was a specific, like, 2-hour episode about, like, raising kids. So without having another 2 hours here, just, like, maybe something you can impart, about, like, just what it's like to combat this, conservative propaganda that is fed to children in public schools. It was bad enough when we were growing up. This whitewashed version of history that we've always been given, and a lot of us had to seek out, maybe if it was reading Howard Zinn, or things that kind of started to open us up to, like, the real history, of this country and just in general. But now it's getting even worse in the public schools. Texas passed a law saying that the 10 Commandments have to be displayed in every classroom, which, it's unconstitutional, but that doesn't matter anymore. Like, these norms that we used to have are just thrown out the window, and the far right does whatever they want. So I know that's a huge question. But just any advice you can give for helping the little ones, the younger generation, to grow up understanding some of the stuff that we've talked about, and, like, what it's like to be that good person, to impart good values, not just on the adults in your life, but on kids as well.
It's a great question, and a question a lot of people are asking, especially as people, some people begin to have families and have kids in this fucking crazy historical moment. And of course, if you want to hear my full opinions, that Upstream episode relatively recently, a couple months ago, on radical parenting, you can easily find it. And that was a really deep discussion on exactly these points. And I'm having another one soon with JT from Second Thought and Nick from Means TV, who are both new fathers themselves. But Yeah, so I have a 16-year-old daughter, a 10-year-old son, and a 3-year-old son. So I run the full gamut, get the full
Mm-hmm.
experience. I like you. I was born in '89, so my childhood was the '90s, and I have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
nostalgia for the '90s, and we have a lot of nostalgia for our childhoods in general because we were children, we were innocent, and things were different and fun and new.
Right.
So it's not to say that the '90s weren't also a shit show in many ways in the United States. But yeah,
Right.
staying outside with your friends all day till the fucking lights came on, and not having
Mm-hmm.
social media, and having to go to a store and buy your first album with parental explicit warning on it and stuff. Like,
Yes.
something nice about that. And I
Yeah.
do think humanity will figure this out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Humanity will find the balance with technology, but
Mm.
that's like at the cost of like 2 full generations before we do. And
Right.
that's what we're seeing. There's a sandwich generation that where like humanity hasn't figured this shit out, and
Yeah.
it fucking sucks, and you just have to deal with it. Now,
Mm.
okay, all throughout history, generations have had to deal with shit. So there should be a basic robustness where we understand that there's been no period in human history that has been totally free of fucking terrible things. It doesn't take the form of rapid technological progress, but whatever, a tribe invading yours 5,000 years ago and you watching your brother and father be butchered to death or whatever. I mean, the human
Mm-hmm.
experience is one of suffering and obstacles and horrendous tragedies.
Right.
That aside, still we care about our children and we want to do the best we fucking can. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you navigate that? Well, one thing, and this kind of speaks to my last point, you have to have a good relationship with your kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
Raising kids is
Mm-hmm.
fucking hard. It's stressful. You're not going to be a perfect parent. If you think that, I'm a super calm, level-headed person, I never yell, I never scream. Having a kid, I would just take those same traits and, okay, kids will push you in ways you
Mm-hmm.
can't fucking imagine. They will bring out sides of you can't fucking comprehend. They will humble you in that way. You're
Mm.
not as patient of a person as you think you are. Trust me. And you're under the stress of trying to fucking live life already. And yeah, kids are a lot. And I could have my wife on to talk more about that because it's fucking not easy.
Mm.
But so first and foremost, have a good relationship with your kids. You're not here to impose anything on them. I always say, like, if you're an authoritarian parent, if you're trying to impose things on your kids, they will always rebel, or they will be
Mm-hmm.
stunted and suffocated. Right? Being an authoritarian parent has like backlashes to it that are terrible and actually get to the exact opposite point. What are the
Yes.
craziest sort of kids in school are the ones that have been suppressed their whole life, and the first time they have
Yes.
freedom, they don't know how to navigate it and end up doing crazy shit. So you
They go
have to
crazy
have
in
this.
college. Yeah.
Exactly, to their own detriment. Um,
Yes.
so you have to strike this balance between a libertarian parent and an authoritarian one, not in a
Mm-hmm.
political sense, but in a, letting your
Right.
kids flourish and discover and and have a good relationship. Fundamentally, respect their autonomy as a separate being. They're not just your
Mm.
kids. They're a full human being. Also, they don't know anything, so like they don't have, like, look at the adults that don't have emotional control, right? Like, you think a
Mm.
kid is gonna have emotional control, be able to sit quietly for an hour or not have fucking meltdowns and shit? No,
Right.
so expect that. And then the main thing I think is you have to walk this line between putting too much on a kid's shoulders, right? Like, the kids don't
Mm.
need to know about all the terrible things in the world, but also equipping them without over sheltering them, because that's the
Yeah.
libertarian authoritarian dynamic, right? You over shelter a kid, they are less equipped to deal in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You let too much in, they are fucking overwhelmed because they're kids. So
Yeah.
trying to strike that balance is incredibly important. So what I try to do is bring out a child's natural sense of equality and fairness, which
Mm.
we're social animals, so we fucking have. Most people, unless you're like constitutionally sociopathic, you have a fundamental sense of what is fair and unfair, what is just and unjust, and a
Mm-hmm.
recoiling in the face of the unjust. That can be beaten out of you by ideology. You can grow up in a
Right.
fascist society that beats that part out of you. But kids
Mm-hmm.
have it, and so your job isn't to impose on them, it's to cultivate. The
Mm.
seeds are there in the soil. What do you give
Mm-hmm.
water and sunshine to? And so, okay, the Palestine issue. My kids know about Palestine, right?
Mm-hmm.
My kids say free Palestine. They connect with that issue, And in fact, they've seen their dad cry about it. You know, my 10-year-old son was impacted by just watching his dad, who he sees, for better or worse, as a strong, big guy that, you know, can take on anything, weeping in the face of listening to the news together on the way to school, right?
Yeah.
And that is a doorway into radical curiosity. My son like looks at me like, we're just driving to school. I'm listening to the radio too, right? It's like some NPR thing or whatever. It's not some crazy like detailed gore or anything. And he sees this reaction, and out of that comes a conversation, a delicate one, but one in which I say this basic thing is happening in the world, and they're just like us. All right, there's Palestinian little boys that love their dads as much as you love me, and there's dads over there that love their boys as much as I love you, and it's not fair to hurt them. We don't have to go into the viscera and the gore of it, but they're being hurt, and the American government is participating in this hurting, and we don't stand for that, right? So again, these conversations are delicate, they're dialectical, because then the kid's going to come back with something that you have to navigate. But having a good relationship with your kids, cultivating their basic sense of justice and fairness and equality, and letting in a certain amount of the world without letting in too much. It's a hard balance to strike, but I think that's where you begin when it comes to radical parenting. And then I've taken my kids to protest, right? I've taken my kids to union events, not scary, intense protests, but, you know, acceptable family ones. And I've taken them to socialist night school. My older daughter or niece, you know, I took them to a socialist night school thing. My niece and my daughter, 18 and 16, they're developing political consciousness. My niece in particular, she's 18 years old. She looks up to me a lot, and she's learned a lot of her politics from me, and she comes to me with serious questions, personal and political, and I try to navigate and lead and guide her in a lot of ways. And you know what? There's a lot of rewarding aspects to that. Like there's a lot of, I get a lot of meaning in my life through my ability to teach and guide my children and my nieces and my nephews, especially in those moments of their growth where they need it most. Right? They're going to go through difficult times. They're going to go through insecurities. Young women in our society, they deal with insecurities. I've had countless hours of talking with my niece and my daughter about confidence, loving yourself, how our society promotes insecurity, how women in particular are targeted and susceptible to patriarchal conditioning where they never feel like they're enough, and how to try to reject that. And the part that and this is where Buddhism comes in, the part that the ego plays in insecurity. Wherever there is insecurity, there is also ego. The most egoic people in the world are deeply insecure. And I always use Trump as an example.
He's such a good example.
Clearly, he's the biggest narcissist you've ever met, but he needs to make sure his crowds are big and nobody's making fun of his hands. And, you know, people think he's a billionaire. Like, if you're a seriously healthy individual, why would you give a fuck about those things, right? But at the same time, when you're a teenager, that's ego development. So we're not trying to kill the ego. You're a teen. Like there's some fun in exploring and developing a healthy ego and understanding that insecurity comes with it. When I was 17, 18, 16, I was insecure too. You know, young boys and young girls are insecure. They deal with it in different ways. But insecurity is like kind of a growing pain that you have to go through. So helping them develop a healthy sense of self, connecting the political to the personal, the psychological to the material, and being, above all, a good role model. Because what you say is hollow if you're a fucking piece of shit, right? Many parents try to impose things on their kids, and their kids just watch them every day, not live up to it, disregard it. I don't respect at some point, they don't respect you because what you say and how you act are totally different. And as a parent, you will make mistakes. You'll be in a bad mood and you'll scream, you'll yell. And then what do you do next? You go and apologize. You role model apologizing and reconciliation. Me and my wife might get into a bickering match in front of the kids, right? That's going to happen. I'm sorry. We're not perfect. And then we come to the kids and we talk about it. And they see us reconcile, right? Hug, kiss, say we're sorry to one another. You're not going to role model perfect behavior, but you can role model reconciliation, compromise, letting go of your ego, saying you're sorry, being accountable when you fuck up. And that's actually more important, I think, than being a perfect parent that never fucks up, right?
Right.
Because that's impossible on one hand, and the people that try to present that, it's clear at some point that that's a facade. When you
It's
you
fake,
have
yeah.
a normal life, but you try to present as everything's perfect, everything's great, I've never had any problems ever, people see through that, kids see through it. So,
Yes.
again, complicated. We could talk about this for 3 more hours, but those are some opening thoughts.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. And the point you made about, like, specifically with your daughter and niece, you know, and it is important that because we live under patriarchy, that we make sure that our girls understand the extra oppression, the extra scrutiny that they're under just because of their bodies. And it's also important that boys understand that as well, so that they can actively combat against it. Oh, look, my dog is peeking in. It also makes me think about how, like, black parents have to teach their kids extra things about watching out for the police because we live in a very racist society. And so black children, specifically little black boys, are treated as adults so much by the authority figures in our society. And so, like, that's an extra thing, you know. Children of immigrants, also something else they have to think about, right? So it's all these, like, layers and layers of things. But the greater point that you make about just, like, being a good role model, right, and being honest with your kids, and not just teaching them how to apologize, but knowing how to do that yourself as well, is so important. And I think a lot of adults have a hard time with that, especially because, you know, like, you and I were raised by baby boomers. And, like, I'm not here to, like, talk shit about my parents. Like, I love my mom. She's great. But, like, they were raised by the generation before that, like, didn't apologize, especially men. Like, men don't apologize. Like, why would I ever? And so, like, it's also that unlearning these bad habits and things that we were raised with, and trying to impart better things. You know, we always just want our kids to do better than us. And I think capitalists look at that as financially. We want our kids to be rich. But I think that coming from a understanding working class politics and a left perspective is that we just want our kids to be better people and to be like, more emotionally well-rounded than maybe we were at their age. And that's a really cool point you made. Thanks.
Yeah, and also the working class, like, I do embed pride in them, like, you know, like, in a society that says be rich, you're only valuable if you're an influencer, if you're rich, you're driving a Bugatti, right? All these messages that kids get from the internet to, like, instill in them, like, yo, we are fucking working class. Our parents, your grandparents are working class, your great grandparents working class, all our friends are working class.
Right.
There's nothing to be ashamed about that, you know, and not only be ashamed, be prideful of it and care about people who work for a living, because one of the hugest things, this has always been true in American society, and we felt it growing up too, but with the fucking internet, like, this idea of, like, you have to be an influencer, have status, have fame, be rich, right? Most kids now, if you ask them what they want to be when they grow up, it's to be an influencer.
Rich. Yeah.
Rich. It's because it's synonymous with rich. And then you go on Instagram and you see every life looks better than yours, right? Every kid or every whatever your algorithm shows, like, huge houses, going on yachts, you know, the guy you look up to on the internet driving a fucking, you know, sports car, whatever. And like, you know, call like Andrew Tate now. If you're a 13-year-old boy, you're on the internet like 3 years ago or 2 years ago when Andrew Tate was huge. He's like, disrespect women. If you're broke, you're meaningless. If you have to work a 9 to 5, you're trash. You're a brokey. I have a Bugatti. You know, that is so fucking toxic. So inculcating fucking class consciousness and being like, we're working class. We're fucking proud. You know, here's this union event we're going to now that I have this job. And we're going to represent the union. I buy the union clothes for my kids so they can represent it. We are working people. Yeah. We care about working people. Not only here, but all over the world. And there's nothing wrong. There's nothing indoctrination about that. That's who we are. And we're not going to fucking be ashamed of it, right?
Hell yeah. Well, I'm glad this turned out to be positive. I was a little worried. State of the American left can go a lot of different directions. And I know you always take, like, a positive outlook on things, and I'm really glad that we stayed with that through the whole thing. Do you have anything in closing that you would like, you know, anything that we missed, anything you want to talk about, just to close it out?
I want to say rest in power and peace to Asada Shakur. I think we all have a duty. She just passed away yesterday, I believe. We all have a duty to recognize her sacrifice, recognize the risks she took at that time, recognize the state and the obstacles she went up against. Take our hats off to Cuba, who let her live and die as a free woman, refused to give her back to the U.S. so she could be shoved in a cage for the rest of her life while people like fucking Netanyahu and Trump march around the world, live in luxury. Somebody like Asada Shakur was going to be put in a fucking cage for the rest of her fucking life, like this disgusting system. And Cuba said, fuck you, we're not sending her back. And to continue her legacy for the next generations, right? People coming up underneath us, they're thirsty for knowledge. They also need to be reconnected to this history and these traditions and this where this knowledge comes from. And it comes in part from people like Asada. And so we mourn her, we recognize her, we educate ourselves about her, and then we keep the torch burning for her for the people coming up, the 18-year-old just tuning in to how the Red was won or RevLeft for the first time. They're looking up to us, and now we have that responsibility to pass that along. So, huge love to Asada and her family and her legacy. Huge love to Cuba for keeping her safe and letting her live and die in dignity as a free woman, which she deserved, and she was always free. And even if she was in a fucking cage, she would have lived and died as a free woman in that deep internal existential sense, because she rebelled against injustice. She rebelled against the mentality of being bowed and kowtowed by a racist, evil system that fucking hated her. And she refused to be a coward in the face of it, and she refused to ingratiate herself with that system. And so she is a true giant and a true hero. And so I wanted to maybe end on giving her the love and respect that she deserves, and urging everybody listening to educate yourself on the life and sacrifices of Asada and to keep carrying her legacy forward. And of course, always free Palestine. The Palestinians are still being bombed, being slaughtered, being pushed out, being ethnically cleansed. We get to turn off our phones and go hang out with our friends and have a beer and turn on the football game and go to sleep in a comfortable bed. They fucking don't. And we have to keep them in the front of our minds, in the front of our hearts, and to see them as the front line of humanity against this global beast of a system. And so any and all support around the world, the flotillas, support them. The dock workers refusing to ship stuff to Israel. This is how apartheid South Africa fell. The Israel and the UK and the US were supporting them at the state level. The people around the world turned against it, right? Labor unions would refuse to ship fucking shit to them. People came out and protested and shut down, their cities to protest it, and refused to give in. So this is it takes way too long. And every day Palestinians die. And it's fucking unfair and unjust and disgusting. But still, this is how these processes play out. And at the UN, when Netanyahu tried to give his little shitty fucking speech, the Hitler of our time, most people in that assembly got up and walked the fuck out. And he tried to act tough. It bothered him. Because deep down he knows that this is the end of Israel. That even if they can somehow fucking pull this genocide off, they are not long for this world, and the history bin is where Israel will eventually go, because it is rotten to its motherfucking core, and it is evil, and what it's doing to these people is fucking evil. But again, we get to turn off our brains, we get to go do something else. The Palestinians can't have that luxury, and so they deserve to be at the forefront of our hearts until they have a free Palestine from the river to the sea.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining, Breht, and free Palestine. Cheers.
Absolutely. Thank you.